Well, you people can see it. It certainly does resemble a 45 RPM 7-inch EP record sleeve. It says Gay Cowboys in Bondage. And quite honestly, since you are reading that, and even if you're not, even if you can't read English or just don't feel like reading, I already told you what it is. It is indeed the Gay Cowboys in Bondage. It is indeed a record from 1984. And this is indeed the latest Malcolm Tent Shoot interview, in which I take a special guest and put him in the hot seat and give him a real good grilling. We're going to glean a lot of information. We're going to do a lot of data mining today with my special guest, a guy named Mike Lesser. You might wonder who Mike Lesser is, but then again, you might not, because I already gave you, what are you laughing at, man? I ain't done yet. Shit. Ugh. These guests, all they want to do is laugh and draw attention to themselves, I swear to God. Anyway, you might have guessed, but I'm going to tell you now, Mike was the lead singer, writer, and yay, perhaps guiding light behind the Gay Cowboys in Bondage, who were in my book, really major, crucial South Florida punk band in the early 80s. The band that I was in at the time, Broken Talent, kind of looked at the Gay Cowboys and said, you know what? We want to be like that. We want to be able to write songs that good and have that kind of stage presence and to be able to deliver consistently like those guys. We want to do what they're doing. And the fact that they released a cassette album was hugely influential to me when I was first starting to do my record label, TPOS. And in fact, we have come full circle now. After the better part of 40 years, the subtext to this entire thing is, of course, related to product. We have, for the first time since 1983, available on cassette, Gay Cowboys in Bondage. We're not gay, but the music is. The original demo is now back in print on TPOS. And you can find TPOS on Discogs, on eBay, on Bandcamp. And if you don't want to use this folderol, go direct. Talk to me, Malcolm Tent. Here's my PayPal address, which is also my email address. You can just take a big stack of bills and tie them up in a bundle and drop them in a shoebox, secure the shoebox securely, and mail it to P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470, US of A. And you can own, perhaps on cassette, heck, maybe CDs float your boat. Either way, we're here to hook you up with some Gay Cowboys in Bondage. And even if you don't want to buy, the story is great. And we're going to talk about Gay Cowboys in Bondage right now with my old pal, Mike Lesser. Mike, hello.
Hey, Malcolm. First off, representing.
Yes. I love.
I'm very flattered what you said, but I will tell you that when I heard My God Can Beat Up Your God and got your 45, I wished I wrote like you, sir. I said, this band is so raw and so amazing that I was your biggest fan. And purposely was hoping you would be at Richard Shelter's reunion so I could once again see you and give you your due compliments. So I appreciate what you said, but back at you, buddy.
That's pretty cool. I guess we've got what we would call a mutual envy society.
Yes, we're envious.
Well, you know, it's funny. You know, we've already started right off on the good foot. You and I were talking privately the other day, and you mentioned something that I think is really true. You said that at the time when we were coming up with our bands, it was the best time for South Florida punk rock. And I agree with you, you know, I agree with that. I mean, the bands that preceded us were awesome. They were great. And there were a lot of bands that came after us that were really fantastic. But I swear 83, 84, 85 in my book was the time.
I think what I was trying to say, and I'll rub someone wrong with this, I don't care. The bands that preceded us all had stars in their eyes. And I think they really took themselves too seriously. And then the Eat came along, and Mike Kennedy and the Spanish Dogs. And they were musicians, writers who wrote for what they wanted to do to enjoy themselves. That they didn't care if you like it or not. Morbid Opera, you guys, and then you had Larry Joe and Charlie Pickett, and we all were friends. We all went to see each other's shows. No one said you're this, so you couldn't be my friend, or you're that. It was a fantastic scene. I was in it long before I was in any band that got booked, or, it just, I knew I could be in a band in that scene. I knew I could take my songs I wrote and join a band in that scene.
And that was, the underlying beauty of it. And that's the one thing that I don't think you can ever overstate this about punk rock. With punk rock, you could do that.
Well, TPOS said it in the intro to the flip side, which we'll talk about later, I imagine, that people like to put labels on things. Oh, it's punk rock, it's this, but everything was rock and roll. Everything, and what we did was rock and roll. It just had less chords, or, a different subject matter. So, yeah, we were a punk rock band, but the truth is, we were just making music.
There ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, sir.
So yeah, let's talk about it. And this is going to be great for me because so many of these bands that we were in the scene with, I never really sat around and talked with anybody. Like, well, how'd you get into this? And who are your influences? We were so busy doing things that kind of stuff never came up. So we sort of got to catch up on that. So tell us, Mike, how did you, in the absolute wilderness of Broward County in the late 70s and early 80s, happen to stumble upon this thing called punk rock?
Okay. I had no idea about it. I give it all to my brother who lived in New York. I give it all to my friends who introduced me to this stuff. And honestly, the first trip to Progresso, the first trip into, I will admit to you, I'm not ashamed to say it because I know many did. I played the Dead Kennedys album on the wrong speed. And went, this is really drag and slow. I thought this was some hyperactive super band, right? The new thing.
You're talking about In God We Trust Incorporated, right?
Yes.
I did the same thing.
And then all of a sudden, my friend says, let's try it on 45. And there you go. So, but my brother introduced me to the Ramones before even CBGBs. He had gotten hold of demos, all my stuff came import from, I knew the Buzzcocks, I knew all this, but they were import. Nothing until I went to Open. Then it was like, yes. And Leslie is the most wonderful, awesome person in the world. And how could you not change her from the lady who was behind the counter to one of the best friends you could ever have, and one of the best supportive people you could ever have?
Yeah, definitely.
And so that was it. I started saying, instead of racking my brain to try to play the classic rock, like, of course, your beloved Grand Funk Railroad, we all grew up in the 60s and the 70s. So we had these likes, but when it came time to do it myself, I didn't want to try to amass to that. I only knew how to play guitar this way, and I only knew to write as I knew how to write. And punk rock said, it's great, it's fine, it's perfect, you know? And so that was it. I was hooked on punk rock. I threw all those other records to the side and started filling in the Necros and Husker Du and, you know, like we all did.
Yeah, yeah. It's really worth mentioning again, Open Books and Records and how pivotal that was. You know, all the great record stores in South Florida, such as Open and Yardbird and Yesterday and Today, and then later on Blue Note, Rankin Records, the great reggae shop. But really, in my opinion, Open was the pinnacle. And
Open was the pinnacle.
I will never forget the first time I walked into the Open Books and Records location at Progresso Plaza after seeing ads like in Mouth of the Rat and the Rag and what have you, and just actually being in an independent record store. It was really, really an eye opener and a mind blower. So yeah, got a big salute to Ted and Leslie of Open Books and Records for sure. Do you conceivably remember what was the first record you bought there?
I want to say it was that Dead Kennedys album. I believe so. I had bought stuff because, you know, like you say, you buy, there used to be a newsstand on, I want to say US1 in Broward. A lot of people probably know what it was. And the NME was in there and all the great magazines. So I would see the mail order stuff. And, you know, it was before the internet and PayPal and all. I would mail my check to Europe and hope I would get something back, and I would. And like I said, I was buying, my first Clash album was an import, you know. What did I have? I had to try to open, or a young kid opened up Underground Records for a little while there. Also, I think kind of on Sunrise or Welton Manors.
Yeah, way out by the beach in Sunrise. Yeah, Mark. I think it was like 86.
Mark, right.
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Smith and Joy Division. That was his jam.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. So you discovered punk rock, which by extension means that you were like almost all of us into a lot of the regular stuff before we discovered punk rock. You know, for me, it was all about playing Y100. You know, so Y100, what'd you hear? Bee Gees, Leonard Skinner, Donna Summer, you know, disco, all that stuff.
Hey, wash a few cars, buy tickets to the Sportatorium, whoever it was. You know, me and I believe you know Lori Kersey, we were very close friends back then, and in bands together. She played bass and I played guitar. We traveled up to Orlando to see the Stones or the Who or whatever. Yeah, but you know, once you get the hardy hardcore, you gotta hide it. What? No, never. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story how Ravenous Gangrene and I became, to this point, we're brothers from another mother. Our relationship is still tight. It was the F show with the Misfits at Finders. And, you know, the parking there was really crappy. And I said to the fire station, is this a legal parking space? And they said, yes, kid, just park there. It's fine. It's good. Come out. My car is gone. The assholes had towed it. So I realized that Ravenous lived in Broward and I lived in Broward. I said, hey man, can I get a ride? Gets in the car, and you know how you have the cassette in the cassette deck, and if you turn on the car in those days, the cassette starts playing. Steely Dan runs. He's going, whoa, man, whoa, whoa, and I'm like, no, it's cool, dude, it's cool, dude. I love the Dan, I love Steely Dan, it's just good stuff, don't worry. And that was it, man, like this, from that day on. Our secret until now.
That's great though. You didn't mock them. You accepted it for what it was, which is very punk rock.
Yes, it was like, if I won't tell anyone if you don't tell anyone. Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's Misfits and Fear and, you know,
Yeah, which
Rah, rah, rah.
obviously great, but you can't listen to that stuff 24/7. It just doesn't.
Oh, back in those days, I kind of just divorced the classic stuff.
I think we all did. I mean, I know I definitely got dogmatic for a while, but after a while, I kind of rediscovered Kiss, and I never stopped my love for Black Sabbath. That was always
Oh,
there.
Kiss. No, 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 no. As you notice, every Cowboy song had a Kiss cover. So every Cowboys gig. So no, no, no. Kiss was omnipotent to any, you know.
Yeah. I'll admit I outgrew Kiss for quite a while, but once I got back into them, I never left. I'm still into Kiss with a vengeance now.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, you into all that stuff and you discovered punk rock. What on earth would make you want to actually start a band in Broward County?
Okay. First off, the Cowboys weren't the Gay Cowboys at first, and they were a very, very happy accident.
Mm-hmm.
Lori Kersey and I were in a band, and Lori left it, and Eddie, who I knew, joined the band. And I played guitar, and this guy James played guitar. We could never really find a drummer, which is a problem. We only knew about Joe Elizabeth. And so we had a band. Of course, Pete was in the Esssentials, and Mike Ravenous was in F, and we all were friendly and friends. I knew Pete because I was on the staff with the Spanish Dogs back when. And we always had these like famous warehouse parties. F's rehearsal space was a great warehouse party over by the Zares in East Broward. And it was just going to be F playing that night. And we were clowning around during the day. And we said, why don't we do like a slam on our bands? We'll just write songs. So I wrote a song about this guy, James. James is lame. They shaved his ass and called him Ames. Because remember, Ames was the drummer for the menstrual cycles and always go, why aren't you skanking? Why aren't you skanking? So I love that guy. Talk about drummers. You talked about drummers today. And so Mike and Pete were like, Angelo was the greatest guy in the world, idolized Alice Cooper. Like his persona started with Alice Cooper. So that was Flash, the greatest rock singer in the world, in my opinion. So I said, and I wrote, he drank alcohol. So I said, I wonder if he puts beer bottles up his ass. And I hate Flash, and and that's how I Have Flash got written. And we wrote another song about, I forget. And then we just said, we'll be the opening band for F that night. And after we did this, we had so much fun. I said, do I dare? I will. I have been writing songs, music and words, but I don't want to give it to this other band I'm in because I don't think are good enough, and I'm just not feeling this band. We can't find a drummer. I had started doing singing because I broke my arm, so I couldn't play guitar because I couldn't sing and play guitar back then at the same time. And I said, you know what? I'm going to dare do it. I said, guys, we get along and have so great. Why don't we be a band? I have these songs. He said, let me hear them. And I played them for him. He said, no offense, but the rhythm parts are great and the songs are great, but the leads are very obligatory, ordinary. And I said, yeah, I'm not a lead guitarist. I only know basic pentatonic scales and stuff like that. All of a sudden now I had Mike, I'll call him Mike now, he's still Ravenous, but Ravenous. putting drums to these songs, and wow, these songs sounded so much better. Eddie, had kind of heard him before, but now he had a chance to just create his bass parts. Eddie, to me, he was amazing. And Pete, put a better lead to Domestic Battlefield, a better lead to those songs. And I said, this is wonderful. And so we started putting it together, and we were playing and playing, and lo and behold, if you can see it, Piper High School Battle of the Bands, our alum, our high school. We go enter as a Rush cover band called Social Risk. I'm wearing a Kill Anyone with Drugs shirt. We just go right into Domestic Battlefield. Of course, it pisses off the locals in the front, the jocks. Next thing I know, I'm being tackled and attacked by 4 jocks, and I'm punching and kicking them in the cojones and getting them off of me. We get told to leave. Nonetheless, we didn't win. And it just energized us. We're like, wow, this is great. So I said, you know what? Because there was rumors that the Esssentials were going to LA. Let's go in the studio. I would love to just have a memory sake of these songs done with drums and bass and everything. So Pete put this into sync, and Dave Camp was producing and helping us on the board. And we had Hal Specter there, and we recorded these songs. And we had everything but Cowboys Are Gay and Silliness Overture not done. And Pete goes, right before Pete's leaving again, we're still practicing because Pete feels, he's going to be doing like he did, multiple bands. And Libby and Lisa, who Morbid Opera, they lived the building next to me, saw them all the time. We were friends. We have crazy get-togethers and stuff. Say we're playing this art museum on Hollywood Beach, Hollywood, Young Circle. Why don't you play? And it was the first time we ever played a gig where we were tight because we had really practiced the songs. It sounded great. And we had recorded it, but this is the first time we were the Gay Cowboys in Bondage. So that was like amazing. Like, felt like we had this cool name, we were sounding good, and then ripped right up from us. Pete goes to LA with the Esssentials. And I thought that was it. I said, well, all right, back to auditioning and trying to play guitar in some band.
Right on. Let me call a quick timeout on the narrative right now, because you just talked about a couple of things that I think are really worth delving into a little bit deeper.
Go ahead.
The story of you guys playing at the Piper High School talent show, man, that is so indicative of what you had to put up with in the early 1980s in Florida if you're going to be punk rock. And I don't know if anybody now can even imagine what it was like to actually be at risk of physical assault for the kind of music you like to play.
Oh yeah, we were hassled all the time. I mean, purposely jocks would go to shows just to bash people and to cause trouble. It was, we knew our name was going to just be great. I mean, it was a takeoff of Monty Python, Gay Boys in Bondage. So we were in practice because I said, like, we think, and when we were recording, we were called Social Risk or Society Risk, I don't know. And Eddie was doing something Pete didn't like, and Pete was like, "Don't be a gay boy in bondage." And of course, we're in Broward County, and I said, "Don't be a gay cowboy in bondage." And we looked at each other, and I went, "That would be one effing great name for a band. Wouldn't that piss people off?" You know. And to my surprise, everybody loved it in the band. And my wife Lori was my girlfriend at the time. I told her, "Guess what, Lori? Our name's going to be Gay Cowboys in Bondage." And she looked and went, "Awesome!" and didn't go running. And I said, "That's it." My soulmate.
She passed the test.
Yeah. But so we played that, and everything was great until, like I said, Pete went to LA until his return, you know.
Yeah, which is another story, you know, because it seemed like, and this is another sort of underpinning for what it was like in South Florida at the time, you know, and I gotta stress again, you were from Broward County. Being in Dade County was bad enough. Broward, I always imagined, had to be a lot worse. You know, the high school, Cooper City Cowboys, you know, and they were cowboys, you know.
Oh yeah,
There were a lot of horses up there and ranches and redneck central. Broward was
exactly. I grew up in a redneck house. My old man was beard and ponytail, you know. That's it.
what city
Yeah.
were you in?
I was in Sunrise, Florida.
Oh wow,
Sunrise Gulf City.
that was way out there at the time.
Yes, that was way out there. Dirt road. When you know, now all those roads commercial in Oakland Park were 3, 4, 6 lanes. Now they were like 2 lanes. You know? Yeah, I mean, that was it. You had the hick cops that hassled you and all that stuff.
Yeah. Welcome to South Florida. And that's why guys like Pete Moss and, you know, any number of others got out of South Florida as quickly as they could, you know, to go to try to make it LA or Atlanta or New York.
Yeah.
And really none of them did.
I was shocked that the Esssentials didn't just take off. I was a huge Esssentials fan. I mean, from the Polish American Club days to the New Wave Lounge to whatever. I mean, I was through them all. And that cassette, believe it or not, was done without any thought that Pete was coming back. I just said, we recorded this and I'd like to get my money back, because I was the one with the better paying job. I was the finance. And I said, I would like to get my money back. And I thought, well, if I sell 10 or 15 of them, you know, I'll get my money back, because I don't know when you guys went into the studio, but we had the old fat master tape, you know, 16 tracks, but we only needed 9. So I sold 7 tracks to this other guy who was recording folk music or something at Sync. So I had some of it back, but I needed that last little bit to break even. And especially when Pete was already gone, and Dave Camp tells me, you know, you still have money on account. You have some hours, and Luciano and Ratbuster really don't like giving back money. So why don't you come in? Is there something you could do? So that's when I wrote Cowboys Are Gay with Mike Hassan. And the Silliness Overture was just on the spot creativity. I said, I'd love to sing an opera song. And Mike went on the, Rabbits went on the piano, and it just rolled from there. It was never rehearsed. It was just all free form, and we satisfied the balance of the studio time. And that was it. I just, after some time went by, said, you know what? Eddie, who is the Raymond Pettibone of South Florida. I said, draw up some cover something. I just want to make a couple of cassettes. We'll sell them at open and I'll break even. And that's it. You know, I didn't think it was going anywhere else.
Right on. So was it because Pete wasn't coming back that you didn't want to commit to doing a record?
No, who had the money to do a record, Malcolm?
True.
The cassette was cheap as cheap. I said, listen, I don't see any cassettes anywhere, but I don't care. You know, they weren't even labels. We just wrote Euroween on one side and Mountain Dew Rules on the other side. It was just, and here's the thing. When I say we made 10 or 15, I mean, it was from one TAC master cassette to the other. It was real time. It was like, you know, and so when I thought I was going to do the cassette, I said, well, let's put the songs from the live thing we did, which was the very last warehouse party. I kind of, you'll have to excuse me chronologically. I may go out of skip because I'm trying to recall them all. But all that stuff on the second side was basically warehouse party before Pete left. It was the greatest night ever. It was the night that we did the immaturity video earlier in the day with the F Troop gang and with Dave Proopstein. Proopstein, that's the first time I ever met him. And that was the night that we flash set all the TVs on fire in the field next to the warehouse, and Destroy was beating them with a bat over the fence and everything. And the cops came, and it was a great night. And I had that tape. The cheddar cheese party, which I wrote when Ronald Reagan actually did give me block cheddar cheese because I didn't have a job for a while, and I went and got my surplus cheese. His saxophone was totally improvised on that song that night. Like you could hear us going, James Chance, because we just were blown away. We didn't even know he played sax. He said, I won't play sax on this. And I said, go ahead. So we had two sides, enough songs to make a cassette. And I said, maybe people will buy it because it says Gay Cowboys In Bondage, and I'll get my money back, and that's it, and that's life.
Yeah, I'm going to take a moment right now to just say just how, from my point of view, how monumental that was, you know, to see a cassette, you know, a humble cassette in a record store with a price tag on it. It was obviously handmade, you know, because you could tell, right? It's,
all Eddie.
You know, really. I mean, you know, photocopied insert, looked like somebody cut it with a pair of scissors and folded up, which is, of course, what you did. The fact that you could do something like that and put it in a record store and somebody would take it seriously enough to buy it. Game changer.
We did the recording, all those recordings in like, I think, I would say like April, May. When I was going through the boxes, I found the actual receipts from the print shop for the covers. And it's July 28th, 83, and it's 50 of them, because I figured it's cheaper to do 50 than to do 10. It worked out the same money. I'll have all these extra covers. Who cares? Who knows? And here's how freaking crazy it went. We made a little box and it was sitting on the desk and open. And I get a call from Ted. Oh, Milo, you know, you brought us 10 or 15. We need more. I was like, what do you mean you need more? And before I knew it, he sold 50 of them. And then I'm like, well, what's it going to cost us? And we'll make the money back. We'll run another 200. And I said, I need 100 of them, like really quickly. Well, here's again, I will tell you, Malcolm, this was the band that did nothing for itself and things happened to it. Okay. I work as a sheet metal worker, welder, pipe fitter, and we get a job in this warehouse because they're adding to the warehouse and we have to do some work. And I'm looking around and I see shelving full of VHS tapes and cassettes and everything going. I see all these machines running. I said to the guy, what is this? What's going on here? And he says, well, we're a Christian distribution house and we do mass production and we do shows in the back and stuff. I said, really? He says, we can run simultaneously 100 up to 100 tapes and cassettes and VHS and make copies. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, and these blanks, how much do they cost? And he told me and I went, what? Are you kidding me? So he says, why? And I said, well, I'm in this band called GCIB and praise the Lord, praise the Lord. I would love to you think that I could come in and do the mass production work? He says, I can't afford to pay your labor, but could I just do it myself? And he says, well, yeah, it's like 5 o'clock now. Hang out till like 5:30 when they all leave, and I'll tell the security guard to let you do what you got to do. No problem, just pay us for the stuff. And then he says to me, GCIB, what does that mean? And I'm like, and I'm like, God's Crusaders into the battle. And he goes, I love it. I love it. I said, yeah, we're gospel, man, pure gospel, and praise the Lord, and gospel. And so that night, I ran 200 tapes and told him, I need 200. He says, I can get 100 for you real quick. And most of them, I'm telling you, never even hit the stores. People, word of mouth, we were getting by the mail. We had the address. We were getting requests for the tape. Mail me, mail me, mail me. Here's the money, here's the money, here's the money, here's the money. It was ridiculous. I mean, we got a letter from a Marine in Lebanon, which is a sad story because he was in that tragedy that happened there when the barracks were attacked, saying, my brother sent me your tape and we all love it. It's the greatest thing we ever heard. You know, it just was mind blowing. And Mark from Underground, we sent some down to Yardbirds, but mostly Open was like a sell machine for those. And Mark was a sell machine. And before I knew it, besides stuff that we sent to like Flipside and to Maxim Rock and Roll and to other fanzines, but even fanzines were sending us money to get the tape to review, which was weird.
Yeah, that's pretty much uncalled for, really, or unheard of, I should say.
Right. So we realized this thing is kind of out of control and we're not a band. So we started auditioning. And we almost had a guy play guitar for us in the band who was a DJ on WFT Life, easy listening. His name was Wally. He was about 6'2", and but his problem was he still couldn't play fast enough. So we were trying to speed him up because we really liked him as a guy and we were desperate because I get a call from Richard Shelter saying, hey, we want your band to play, I think it was another show aid.
Yes,
Flynn's
infamous Flynn's.
on a Thursday night. And I said, Thursday night, we have day jobs. What do you mean Thursday night? He said, every band has to play Thursday night. So we had an August 4th deadline. Try to get this guy to play faster. But again, like I say, the universe looked out for Gay Cowboys. Pete comes back, desperate to start, where we left off. And so we just practice, and boom, we played August 4th, at Flynn's, and it felt great. It was good. And people were there on vacation with their visiting cousins who were punk rockers. And next thing I know, they're like, do you have any cassettes? You have cassettes. We want to bring them back to Boston. We want to bring them back to Chicago. People were coming down on spring break would see us play. Do you have cassettes? And bring them back. Next thing I know, this college radio station's playing us. This college radio station's playing us. And we're just a little tiny local band that lives in Broward County,
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it, because even in a totally blighted, benighted place like South Florida, there were people who were hungry for that kind of music, and this also gets back to what it was like in the pre-internet days when, with one click of the mouse, you're completely overwhelmed and inundated with more than you can handle. At this time that we're talking about, 1983, you really had to be in the know. You had to hear about it. You had to seek it out. And when you found it, it was special. It was a real treasure that you had stumbled upon.
No, I was shocked. I mean, here I am. I was avid cover to cover Maximum Rock and Roll reader. I mean, like, don't bother me. I'm reading my Maximum Rock and Roll. And when I saw that 3 of the 4 DJs, everyone but Jello, gave a nice review of the cassette. They liked it. Timmy played it on his show, one of the songs on his show I heard, and all this. Jello had a problem with the name.
Of course, Jello had a problem with the name. That's Jello for you.
Yeah. But in the end, when they played Florida, and, he said, no, you guys were good music. I just didn't want to promote the name. I didn't want to put you on my list, but yeah, I mean, and thank goodness, thank God, those mass-produced tapes that I thought would just sit around, but the price was so good that, if I had said I only need 10 or 15, the guy wouldn't take me serious. But if I was buying, 200 from him,
right,
and we started playing out, we started getting gigs, and Shelter started giving us weekends, which was greatly appreciated.
Now, speaking of gigs, okay, so you played Flynn's. Where else was there to play in late 1983?
I really didn't enjoy the Flynn's and stuff like that, in the sense that it was regimented, and you gotta go on, and here you are. The gigs I loved were playing the warehouse parties, the house parties. Jack Fenton, who was a photographer, he asked us if we would play a pool party, and it was excellent. It was so much fun. And Tony Latino, we played her house parties a couple of times, and it was just fantastic. And it's just punk rock to us, And we played a place called the Casbah, which was 5 minutes from my door, which I loved. And then we had played some other places, Roach Motel. We were like Roach Motel's sober brothers. We had a very interesting relationship with Roach Motel. They loved playing with us on the bill when they came down. They would ask for us, and we went up to Jacksonville or someplace and played up there for them. And But other than that, we really just waited for Shelter to call us and say, hey, you want to play? I mean, we weren't rock stars. We didn't, we were just so happy to just practice and just play together. We were friends. We were good friends. We had fun at practices. We fooled around. We joked around. It wasn't like it was like BS for about 30 minutes, play a song, practice a song. Oh, I wrote a new song. It's called Nuka Beach Bum. Or I wrote a new song,
Yeah.
It was like that. And, that's what made it so good. We were having a ball. It was just fun.
It seemed like it. And the fact that everybody in the band, and this is one of my envy points from back then, was that everybody in the band was a top shelf musician. Like you guys could actually play.
Yes.
Which made it look very easy.
I always felt I could be replaced. I always felt insecure amongst them at the beginning. That's why I was so happy I was the one writing the songs, because I said, well, that gives me an anchor. And of course, anyone who saw us knew that Mike's drumming was just so awesome and Eddie's bass playing that it just made me go crazy. All of the moving around on stage I did was absolutely going strictly on the drums and the bass, just that pounding, wonderful backbeat. I just let myself go, and before I knew it, I was just, as a bass player for F called me Thumper. I was just moving around and just having a great time. I said, well, if I'm going to be a singer, I'm going to do what I couldn't do when I played guitar in bands. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to get gusto in this. I'm going to have a great time with it.
Yeah, and with that kind of musicianship, I think it'd be very, very easy to have a good time. And it's like you just kind of said, you let them do the work.
Mm-hmm.
You can dance and jump around, and
yes,
so
you'll excuse me while I take a sip of this Vancouver, BC, excellent tap water.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to hoist a jug of the Danbury tap.
I hoist to your Danbury jug. I did that in honor of you.
Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Molotov cocktail, or whatever that is. So yeah, and we just we were always hassled by Flynn's. That's another reason I don't like going.
And what was the story behind that?
We just considered ourselves a band. It didn't matter that someone bought a cassette. That's great. They bought it. They enjoy it. That's wonderful. But we were fans of everybody else, and so to us, when they say, well, we want you to go on at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m, we'd be like, I have a day job, pays me a lot more than Flynn's does. I have a life to do. This is great. I love being in the band, but I also have rent to pay and bills. And so we'd always go on at like 10 o'clock. So we'd have Flynn pissed off at us because when we played, supposedly he'd say, no one goes to the bar to get a drink. They all are watching us. I said, well, that's not my fault. Shelter would be mad because when we were done, half the crowd would leave. So he'd be bitching at us from that side. Like, you can't go on at 10 o'clock. You guys are headliners. And we're not headliners. We're just on the bill. What's the difference if they hear us at 10 o'clock or at 1 o'clock?
Right.
We were wimps.
So now that raises an interesting point. I'm going to assume that unlike the Esssentials, for example, or Charlie Pickett or the Cichlids, you guys really weren't
far better than us.
What's that?
Far better than us. Charlie,
but they were more like they were more like careerists, and you guys weren't looking at the band as you weren't looking at the Gay Cowboys in Bondage as like a full-time band. You had no aspirations to go to New York or Atlanta or.
No, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, Pete did. Pete was, and this is not a knock on Pete. It probably, because it brought the album that you saw, the Owen Marshmallow. That was all Pete's pushing. You know, I would have done another cassette because he was the most talented person I ever met in my life. I think if Pete had looked differently, who knows where he would have gone. I think people judge Pete by the cover and not by who he was. He just was fantastic, just a sweet, great guy. His mom, oh God, I used to drive his mom crazy. But his talent, he knew that was his ticket. I think he knew that if he was gonna be, his ticket was that. And he saw more in the Cowboys than any of us did. You know, we used to always say Mike was the hobby drummer and, you know, and so forth. But otherwise, yeah, we just were having fun, and we appreciated someone saying, hey, come out and play with us and whatever. We weren't full of ourselves. It may have looked like it, but we really weren't. You know, when other things that happened to us and were offered to us, we turned down because it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth to try to struggle for something when we had other things that were, you know, in our life too.
Just as like sort of a historical what if you would care to talk about it, like what were some of the things that came your way?
Well, out of the blue, we were contacted. I could have been because it was out in LA and we had cassettes selling out in LA and stuff, by Flipside, and said, I think you guys are great and fantastic. I love your cassette. We want you to be part of a project. It's going to be a compilation. And he started telling me that Dickie's going to be on it, and the Misfits, and White Flag, and all this. And I was like, you know, oh my God, my album collection.
Right.
You know, remember White Flag with the skip thing?
Yes, the Impossible to Play record, S is for Space.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And Red Cross was going to be on it. It just was. And so I said, well, Pete, put something together. You know, we put something together with the rock and roll thing, like I said, and it went out there and we were on this vinyl. And he said, I'm putting together a VHS thing too. This was much more forward. He came back to us. This was 84 already. And he said, do you have any video? So we opened up for the Minutemen, which was the greatest thrill of my life. Unbelievable, because the fanship of them was off the charts. And to just sit and talk to them and hang with them. And so we did the video, and I have some video of that. And we sent him big fat bologna sandwich. And he just saw me jumping around like crazy, and he saw Eddie doing his thing, and the whole thing, and actually saw who we were and what we were. And he said, you guys are amazing. And he wanted to put us out there, like to tour. So I was like, all right, so what does that look like? And he said, well, you'll have to get yourself any kind of transportation that will get your equipment and your everything and go. And I'll try to find you any venue that will take you. Sometimes you'll be the first slot, sometimes you'll be the second, you'll have to find your own housing, everything. But you'll have my name out there for you. No. You know, I was in love, and I didn't want to leave my girlfriend for all those months. I didn't want to be driving in Florida plates and from whatever, Iowa, whatever, and get pulled over and hey, boss, you know. So that was like something that was like, we don't want to be rock stars. Yeah, you know, just the more it became a business, the more it became an obligation. That it just kept tearing it down.
Mhm.
And that would have been a huge obligation. That would have just destroyed us. I think the chemistry, our friendships, everything.
Yeah, it's a severe test when you're cooped up in the van with somebody for any length of time in the best of times. But yeah, when you're dealing with things like promoters stiffing you, running out of gas, vehicle breaks down, you're in Iowa and there's nothing but corn. That's when the bonds of friendship do get tested.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, so we just were doing our thing. And Pete says, you know, we got all these great new songs and I want to do a record. We should do a record because the cassette was done. I understand why you did the cassette, but I think it's a pain in the ass to expect people to keep having a cassette where 15 minutes of it is, you know, empty space and all this. And I said, well, what is it going to cost? And I said, okay, if I work a few more hours this week. And we went into the studios and, you know, so
Was
if you
this
want
also Sync Studios where you recorded the record?
to Stink Studios, it was Dave Camp again. And that was such a different experience. We just were total assholes.
Any particular reason why?
Yes, I love to share this story because I'm proud of it. So as you know, I believe his name was Luciano, tall blonde haired guy, and Rat Bastard was, and Dave Camp, and I think Hal were all partners in Sync. Eddie and I walk in and we see right there on the wall, Ebony and Ivory, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. And we look at each other and we went, what a bunch of dongs. And we're like, So Eddie gets out a flare pen because he always carried one. And he says, care to join me? And I went, sure. So we drew one and we drew the other. Ebony and Ivory. Rat Bastard sees this and says, what did you guys do? Frank, you know, what did you do? And we're like, Ebony and Ivory. Oh man, Luciano threw a gasket. He chased us all around the place. And Dave's like, don't kill him. They're paying customers. I'll get you another promo poster. Don't kill him. And so, you know, that was part of it. And of course, we had special guests. We had Henry Soria was playing bass for the Esssentials at the time. He was in the studio with us. He's the one, you know, Burt Ween was the Henry Soria song.
Okay, I was wondering, you got the song named after him and I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, I had this thing where we would go up to each other and go, Burt Ween, and you'd be like, oh. We had so much fun as friends. We were always clowning around. We were always silly. I mean, Owen Marshmallow was because we were insulting each other, you know, and one said, you're just a doofus Owen. And I went, and someone said, you're an Owen Marshmallow. And I said, strikes again. And we went, that's the name of our record, right? You know, and of course, Eddie starts drawing, you know, and he's got the giant Owen marshmallow monster, drink orange juice, you know.
I think we should cut right now, and unless you've got one there, I've got mine here. I'm gonna aim at the camera again. I love this cover. That's a great pen and ink drawing, genuine punk rock art right there.
I'm telling you, he was the Raymond Pettibone of South Florida. He just was amazing, you know. And yeah, I mean, like, here's Dave, right? You know, doing multiple body manipulations, which you hear on the cassette. You know, it's like we just had such a good time. I mean, playing out was great, but it wasn't like, you know, there wasn't the fame aspect. We didn't care. It didn't matter. You know, it was, if it's fun and it's good, we keep doing it. And OM Marshmallow came out great. And now I have an amazing treat for you, sir. Pretend it's like mail and the Million Mile Scissors.
Oh, I see a little unboxing. What could this be?
It went to our record label, Barry's label, Suburban Relapse, which was, Barry was incredible. It weighs about 3 pounds. The original lacquer that the pressing plate was made for OM Marshmallow.
Wow.
It was 2 lacquers we got from, as you can see, Criterion Studios, which was a story itself. We go walking in the front door, we say, "Oh, we're here to get our master done for our album pressing and get it all done." And we see all the Peter Frampton and Eric Clapton posters and the gold records. And the receptionist says, "You're in the wrong place, sir. You have to go around the corner, through the back door, and down that hallway."
Because you're not Eric Clapton, that's why.
Yes, yes. So we go down this boring old hallway, you know, and we find the door, and this was it. This was, you could see the grooves of the record, and the rest is all blank. And this thing weighs about 3 pounds. And this is what they made the metal pressing plates at Alpha Records.
Wow.
We took this to Alpha Records, and the first 1,000 were made.
Wow.
Alpha Records, June 15th, 1984.
Man,
Yep.
great. That is really, really cool. Awesome artifact.
Yes. I mean, I went through some pretty dusty boxes just to try to refresh my memory of things. And I was amazed. I'm like, I have that? Wow, that's pretty cool. So, and that album, we had a deal with Barry. He was a distribution. We paid for everything, and he took a small part for distribution. But Barry wanted to start a label, and he figured having us would be good, because then I think he had Morbid Opera and so forth. But Barry, he did things that I had never heard of before. He got record distributors and package buyers to pay upfront, not consignment, not upon return. Rough Trade took like 50 or 100 records overseas, and we were getting letters from, I wrote it here, New Zealand, France, England. I was getting fan letters from. Ready for this one? Someone tells me and sends me a Sports Illustrated magazine. Okay, you're familiar with Sports Illustrated. I know sports music is your thing, not sports. All-star relief pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers. His name was Dodgers. His name was Scott Radinsky. He was a punk rocker. He was in a band called Clutch or something like that. In the interview itself, in Sports Illustrated, every jock in the world getting this in their mailbox, buying off the newsstand, said, you should see the faces, basically, of my other players when I'm blasting in the clubhouse, Gay Cowboys in Bondage. And I'm like, holy crap, we're in a magazine.
You're in Sports Illustrated, maybe the swimsuit issue even.
The band Superchunk had a travel diary. And on one of the pages, it says, they just don't have band names anymore like Gay Cowboys in Bondage. And this was like, yeah, okay. We're not even, this was after we were even a band. I mean, it's like, I think people put more into us than we put into ourselves, is my point. It's just kind of weird, you know, even today that these things are happening, you know, that you release it, that it's on formats places. We were just together for 2 years and we were just a local band.
Yeah, and that's also the beauty of it. You put something out, and if it's good, it's going to have legs, you know. And of course, time and location are very important to all that as well. I'm going to take the opportunity now. We've been talking for a solid hour, my friend, and I don't think
I ramble on. I apologize.
no, that's good. That's why you're here. We want to hear what you have to say. And I was going to say, I don't think we're done yet. I think we could still talk about a few more things. I don't know if you agree, but
I agree. Sure.
well, all right then. I'm going to say let's break now, and we will carry on in another installment of this shoot interview because I want to hear all the stories, all of them.
I made my notes here for you.
Okay, good. Keep them. Don't burn them. Keep the notes because we
Yes,
still got
sir.
some territory to cover. So yeah, great wrap up, great breaking point for part 1. And I'm going to take this moment to once again remind the people that the stories are awesome, but you know, I do still have the record label and I do still like to shift the product. So yes, back in print for the first time in almost 40 years. We're Not Gay, but the music is. Check out the custom pink packaging. Oh boy. This has not only the demo, but it also has Owen Marshmallow Rides Again in its entirety and a number of bonus cuts never heard before by human ears. It's on cassette. It's on CD. I'm going to be pinning a link to where you can get it. But here's some of the visual reminders of the usual suspects: Discogs, eBay, Bandcamp. Look it up on TPOS, baby, because it is hip, it is hep, it is happening, and it is right here and right now. Mike, thank you so much for an awesome first installment.
I haven't talked about this stuff for like 30, 40 years. It was fun to just revisit it all.
For both of us, you're evoking a very special time and place, and one that I was very, very excited and happy to be a part of. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, sir. I'm honored to be on your show.
Right on. So that's it, gang. You heard that's part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon to an internet near you. Until such time arrives, this is Malcolm Tent and Mike Lesser saying so long from the Nutmeg State.